Make some noise for your amazing host.
Welcome back. Your training here at the Inner Workings Institute is almost complete. I hope you're proud of yourself. Reviews are in a couple of weeks, so keep up the good work. Today, we are examining a story called Saul for One and One for Saul from the book of 1 Samuel. I just received a transmission that your lunch break is pushed back an hour today, so I hope you had breakfast. If there's any time between training, you can check out the break room for a snack, but just take one. Trust me, that kind of stuff ends up on your review. Let's go ahead and take a further look at what you can expect today and check in with Mr. Coyote in the experiment unit.
Coming up.
Listen up, recruits. In just a few minutes, you'll be joining us here in the experiments unit, where we're taking a closer look at your soul. Stay tuned for more of Inner Workings.
I am looking forward to seeing more in the experiment lab with Mr. Coyote. But we've got a few other things to get to first. Following this next video, we will enter into the worship unit together, hear our Bible story, and then check out today's experiment. Speaking of, remember to select the download button below this video to access your Get Real guide. Inside it, you will find recruitment information and other valuable content that will help you prepare for your weekly trainings and reviews. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at this training video.
Welcome back, everybody. Mrs. Coyote, I have a question for you.
Okay.
When you see a piece of paper in front of you, what is your preferred method of writing?
Good question. So I definitely want lines on my paper. I like things to be clean and
Vertical
neat.
lines?
Just zigzags everywhere, like mountains.
You know you can create those yourself, right?
That's true,
All right.
and I do. I love writing with a good, smooth pen. To this day, I write in all caps.
I love that. I asked you that question because today we are talking about cursive, we're talking about dinosaurs, froyo, and Polaroids on today's episode of Mail Time.
All right, let's go ahead and kick it off. Our first letter comes from our friend named Harrison. Harrison is only 5 years old, which is a great age, love being 5, and he drew this great picture in all orange, by the way. This says Mr. Harrison, and next to him, wearing a super great orange dress, is Mrs. Coyote.
I love that.
I love it, love this outfit. Harrison, this is a great drawing of you and I love getting to hang out with you in your drawing.
Our next letter comes from Ellie and Cooper, who are brother and sister.
Very cool.
And Cooper drew an awesome Louis letter.
Wow.
I love the rendition. You used pencil and you shaded it with the pencil. So awesome, Cooper. And Ellie, she wrote a letter to us in cursive. She also drew a Louis letter. She drew a unicorn. But my question for you is, how many of you guys know how to write in cursive? Back in my day, back in the olden time, we all learned how to write in cursive, and it was really fun signing letters with your cursive name. My suggestion for you guys would be to look up how to write your first and last name, because that's pretty fun, and it's fun like signing things too.
The trickiest letter
What's the trickiest
is
letter?
the capital Z.
Oh.
It's the one that confuses me the most. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. Because the Z in cursive looks nothing like a Z in printing. It's
That's
a very
true.
interesting design.
Cursive's fun though.
It is. It makes you write faster. And it looks like Ellie and Cooper included some money. We will make sure this gets to the offering bucket for you guys. We actually talk a lot about giving on the weekend. We talk about how important it is to be generous. And I think sometimes generosity, it can be money, because that's a way that we can give to our church to help grow spaces for friends to also learn about Jesus. But being generous can also be giving our time or helping others. So Ellie and Cooper, thank you. We will make sure this gets into the right hands. All right, our next letter comes from our friend named Madison. She wants to know, if you had a dream house, what would your dream house be?
I would live in a dream house that has escalators, elevators, and slides. So then if I wanted to go up, I would jump on the escalator. If I wanted to I could use the elevator to go up and down. But when I'm at the top, I could use the slide to get all the way to the dinner table, and then it would go to the couch, and it would go to the sauna. Wait, we don't have a sauna.
In your dream house, you do.
In our dream house, I do.
It's like a real game of Chutes and Ladders, or a real life version. She also drew us a super fun picture of something called a pizza corn, which is half a slice of pizza, half unicorn. So fun, so colorful.
So creative.
Love it, Madison.
And our last two letters come from Bradley and Kenzie, brother and sister, and Bradley actually challenged me, and he said, Mr. Coyote, will you draw a dinosaur holding Froyo? Absolutely, Bradley, I will do that, but I want to hear what your sister had to say as well.
So Kinsey actually included something really great in her card. She loves ballet, but she included this really sweet photo of herself holding her doll. Now, do you know what kind of photo this is? Take a guess, take 3 seconds, 3, 2, 1. Tell us what kind of photo this is.
This is a Polaroid picture.
Okay, so if you don't know what a Polaroid is, these are from ages ago, back in the olden days.
When I was a kid.
I think before our time as well.
Yeah.
But this is basically like an instant photo. There's a camera called a Polaroid camera. You snap a picture, it basically prints out of itself. You wave it around a little bit. I'm still not sure on the science of that, but you wave it and then all of a sudden your photo appears. So you have an instant picture. This is so fun, Kinsey. Thank you for this great Polaroid. Should we get back to the dinosaur eating Froyo?
Of course, so here is our challenge for a dinosaur eating Froyo. Let's do it. All right, Bradley, there is our dinosaur eating Froyo. I hope that you enjoyed that. Man, thank you guys so much for sending these letters in. I feel so inspired by you guys. I think it's awesome getting to hear from you and getting to answer some of your silly questions and ask ones ourselves to you. So thank you for writing in. We can't wait to read more of your letters, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Recruits, let's take a time out of our training today and enter into a time of worship. You've been given upper floor clearance, which means you are able to now enter the worship unit on your own. Once inside, you can find your spot. Make sure others have plenty of space around you so that you can follow the motions, clap, or even kneel if it feels right. Let's go ahead and worship together.
Bible's more than just a book. It's the word of God, here before and God does not see the same way people see. God does not see the same way people see. People look at the outside of a person, but the Lord looks at the heart. God does not see the same way people see. He sees the real you. He sees the real me. He sees the real you and me. The real you and me. He sees the real you. He sees the real me. He sees the real you and me. The real you and me. Let me see you like he sees you. Let me look deeper. Let me see better. Let me see you like he sees you. God does not see the same way people see. People look at the outside of a person, but the Lord looks at the heart. God does not see the same way people see. He sees the real me.
Today's story unit core file is number 004 about Saul for one and one for Saul from the Bible in 1 Samuel chapter 24, verse 1 through 22. Today, we're looking at the inner workings of a young king named David and how he rose to fame and power before it all came crashing down. We will examine the core of a human king's heart and learn about the core of our spiritual king's heart too. This week, we'll see how God uses us when we are humble, and that means we can choose to be humble instead of proud. And it sounds like you guys have just been given clearance to take a closer look in 3, 2, 1.
Hey recruits, great to see you again. Welcome back to the story unit. I've got the Imagination Chamber remote mod and our core file is loaded up, so here we go. All right, I want you to imagine if you won the first place award for best science project at your school's science fair. You worked super hard on your project every day after school for months, doing experiments and writing a hypothesis and making a beautiful display to show your work. Everybody knew your project was the best, and you had definitely earned that first place trophy. But then suddenly, the day after you won the award, it disappeared off your desk. You were so disappointed, and you were so upset, and you didn't understand why anyone would take something that you deserved. Well, then a few hours later, you saw the first place trophy peeking out of another kid's open backpack. Can you guys make the best unzipping sound? Nice. Well, what would you do in that situation? Would you take the trophy back or let the kid keep it? Well, did you know that something kind of similar happened in the Bible to David? Let's go ahead and check it out. Last week, we heard about how God worked through David's courage to defeat Goliath of Gath. Now, on the outside, David didn't seem like someone who would defeat a giant. He was young and small and weak. But the good news is that God doesn't look at the outside. He looks at what is in our hearts. Now, we pick back up in our story a few years later. David had grown into a young man and continued to follow God in his choices. He became a strong and a very popular leader. All of the Israelites honored and respected David and knew God was with him. Meanwhile, King Saul chose to stop following and obeying God and instead only cared about his own good. And because of this, he became super jealous of David and angry at how people loved and honored David instead of him.
Now, even though David was a faithful warrior and a servant to King Saul, the king turned on him and chased him all over the country, trying to kill him. David had to run and go into hiding so that Saul wouldn't kill him. And one day, David was hiding from King Saul in a cave. And listen to this. King Saul went into that same cave to go to the bathroom. He didn't know that David was hiding right behind him. David and his men whispered quietly about what to do. And one warrior said, "Obviously you should kill him. You are God's chosen king, not Saul." But David responded by saying, "No. I respect King Saul even though he hates me. God made him the king right now for a reason, and I must honor that." David knew that he had the chance to protect himself by killing his enemy, King Saul. But instead, he silently reached out and he sliced off the edge of King Saul's robe as his back was turned. After King Saul finished going to the bathroom and left the cave, David came out and ran after him. David showed King Saul the piece of Saul's robe he had cut off. And immediately, King Saul realized that David had been close enough to kill him, but he hadn't. Why wouldn't he have taken the opportunity to kill me? King Saul wondered. I am his enemy. But David told King Saul that he didn't want to hurt him and he wanted peace between them. King Saul saw that he had been wrong and he apologized to David and actually thanked him for giving him mercy. Then King Saul admitted that David was following God and was the rightful king of Israel. Wow, can you imagine what it would feel like to have someone that you call your worst enemy close enough to hurt you without you even realizing it? And the fact that David chose to not hurt King Saul is pretty amazing. Even though David was in a position of power over King Saul with the Israelites, and definitely in the cave, he chose not to use his power for his own good. Instead, he was humble. Being humble is when you think less about what you need and want, and more about what others need and want. David definitely didn't act in a way that would be best for him in the cave. Instead, he did what was best for his enemy because he knew that's what God would want. Now that is being humble. So let's take a look at our one thing for today. The one thing to remember is that God uses us when we are humble.
Hey recruits, I am so glad that you've decided to join us in the experiments unit. You know, when I think about God using us when we are humble, I can't help but think about a shoe. What do you think about when you think of shoes? Probably not that much, right? They're usually the last thing you put on when you get dressed. But think about what would happen if you didn't have shoes. Think about your typical day, but you have nothing on your feet. You would probably stub your big toes all the time. It would hurt to walk on hard pavement and messy dirt. People might even step on your feet. You would get poked by thorns and rocks. And just imagine walking barefoot on blacktop during a super hot summer day. Shoes are surprisingly a bigger deal than you might have originally thought. So let's take a closer look at the anatomy of the shoes that do all the hard work for us. We're gonna take our shoes and toss them in our test chamber. Our test chamber is gonna split them straight down the middle so we can take a closer look. Here we go. And it's moving, going through its cycle, and oh, there we go. Take a look at this. Wow. So there are 3 parts to our shoe. The outer sole is made of foam. Then we have the midsole and the cushy insert, which has a bunch of holes in it that kind of make it breathable. On the bottom of the shoe, we have the stuff that's called the tread, and that makes it easy for you to walk and it makes it so you don't slip. And you can see the stitching and the mesh. All of this helps it look cohesive. It makes it breathable. There's some Velcro that we saw. And all of this comes together to make a pretty great shoe. And this is my favorite part. This is called the tongue. I don't know why. Now, if you ask me, I'd say that shoes are the most humble part of our daily outfits. They do so much to protect us, but they often go unnoticed. They aren't really flashy and they don't usually draw attention to themselves, even though they are really important. For us, being humble means thinking less about yourself and more about others. It might look like letting others go ahead of you in line, or giving your sibling the last of the popcorn during movie night, or helping to set the table for dinner when you'd rather be outside playing. Secretly serving others is one of the best ways to be humble, especially when you don't point out that you did it or take any credit for it. Being humble is something God asks us to do as part of our daily lives. That's why our action step for today is that we can choose to be humble instead of proud.
Hi, my name's John, and I want to tell you about a time I chose to be humble instead of proud. I brought this trophy with me today because it reminds me of a story from my childhood where being humble over being prideful was definitely the better way to go. When I was in elementary school, I played Little League Baseball, and I was amazing. I'm just kidding. I was actually really bad. I had a friend from school who happened to play baseball as well, but he was in a different league. And so we always talked about how great we were at baseball, and what he didn't know was that I wasn't good at it. I was the kid who warmed the bench for everyone else because I actually never left it. And when the end of the season came around, my team actually came in last place. The cool thing about my league, though, was that every team received a trophy like this just for playing in our league. That next week at school, I brought my trophy because I had to show everybody that I was great at baseball. My friend, though, he got really jealous because their team didn't do very well either. But their baseball league only gave trophies to the top 3 teams. So he assumed I was one of the top 3 teams in my league to be able to get a trophy at the end of the season. So I just went with it. I started being prideful and bragged about how great I was and how I was even the reason my team won, like I was some rock star on top of the world. Well, I lied. I lied because I didn't want to look bad. I thought it would make me feel good about myself. But my being prideful actually started making my friend feel bad about himself. And in turn, it started to make me feel really bad about lying to him. I felt so bad that I couldn't even sleep at night. I needed to humble myself and tell him the truth. And as hard as that was, that next morning, I pulled him aside and I spilled my guts that I stunk at baseball, that I was the bench warmer on the team, and that my trophy, this trophy, was given to every player, no matter how bad they were. So I chose the humble route and immediately started to feel better. And we laughed about it, and it became no big deal. It showed my friend that I cared more about him than myself. So just like I chose to be humble in that situation with my friend, you guys can choose to be humble instead of proud too.
You've almost completed week 4 of your recruitment training here at the Inner Workings Institute. Now it's time to take a look at our series memory verse from 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7b. God does not see the same way people see. People look at the outside of a person, but the Lord looks at the heart. We saw in our story how David could have easily taken revenge on King Saul for wanting to hurt him, but instead, he was humble and showed Saul mercy. He cared more about King Saul than he did about himself, which is being truly humble. That's why the one thing to remember is that God uses us when we are humble, and our action step is we can choose to be humble instead of proud. You can live out the vision of being real with yourself, God, and others by opening up your Get Real guide to the Now What. One of the best ways to work on being humble is to admit that you are not perfect and have things to work on to be better. This week, talk to an adult you trust, like a parent or small group leader, and ask them, what can I work on so I'm more like Jesus? Listen to everything they say and then work on those things. Great job today, recruits. That's it for today from the Inner Workings Institute. I'll see you next week.